NAGPRA is a human rights statute.
It is a process.
It's a tool.
Level playing field and bring the ancestors back home.
It's about relationships.
NAGPRA is civil rights legislation.
NAGPRA itself outlines the expectation of tribes and museums.
A reconciliation.
That they were not collectibles, that they were not specimens, but they were ancestors of people who are alive now.
Hello, and welcome to the National NAGPRA program. My name is Sangeeta Chari, and I will be hosting this training video on consulting under NAGPRA. In this video, we will explain how the term consultation is defined under the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, or NAGPRA. We will review NAGPRA's requirements for consultation and provide you with guidelines and suggestions towards successful consultation. It is hoped that by the end of this video, we will have explained why consultation is such a critical component of NAGPRA, what to expect from consultation, when to schedule a consultation, and how to make the most of consultation. Consultation is a discussion, conference, or forum in which information and advice are provided and exchanged. Consultation consists of communication, public participation, consensus building, collaborative decision-making, and the exchange of information, knowledge, and ideas. It does not necessarily result in agreement in all issues. When consultation is conducted in a way that is mutually respectful to all parties, it can result in decisions that all parties can support.
Consultation is not actually defined in either the NAGPRA statute or in the regulations, but it's crucial to the NAGPRA process. Consultation is the process of basically informing someone what you're about to do, listening to their comments on it, and then responding to what they've said.
There is a unique nation-to-nation relationship between the United States and each Native American nation. The United States recognizes the inherent sovereign right of Indian tribes to self-government and to jurisdiction regarding tribal citizens and territory. The requirement for formal consultation with Native American governmental and religious leaders is specified in numerous laws and executive orders, including the American Indian Religious Freedom Act and NAGPRA. NAGPRA describes when consultations are to occur, what information is to be shared, and which topics are to be discussed. But consultations can do much more. Consultations provide an opportunity for museums and tribes or Native Hawaiian organizations to learn about each other, build relationships, and share knowledge. They offer opportunities for healing and reconciliation and can serve as the basis for meaningful relationships that extend well beyond the NAGPRA process.
For a successful consultation to take place, that both parties need to come, willing to hear each other's side of the situation and being open-minded, and that might not always work, but it's always a good starting place. Let's sit down, let's talk, let's hear each other out, and I like to go on that you can agree to disagree, that you're not always going to agree, but if you can start that discussion, you can move forward and you can figure out where you need to go.
Under NAGPRA, consultation is considered either face-to-face contact or phone contact. NAGPRA requires consultation to take place between museums, federal agencies, Indian tribes, and Native Hawaiian organizations, or NHOs, as well as any individual who may be a lineal descendant or next of kin to the individuals and cultural items covered under the Act. According to NAGPRA, consultations must occur during the inventory process, after the summary process, and upon discovering human remains and/or cultural items during an excavation on federal or tribal land. This is called an inadvertent discovery. First, we'll talk about inventories and summaries. Museums and federal agencies are required to consult with lineal descendants, next of kin, tribes or NHOs who are or are likely to have an interest in the human remains or cultural items in their collection. This includes tribes or NHOs that are either or once were located where the human remains or cultural items were removed. In other words, the museum or federal agency must contact a tribe regardless of where they are located today, as long as they are or are likely to have an interest in the human remains or associated funerary objects. Consultation may be initiated with a letter, but should be followed up by a telephone or face-to-face dialogue with the appropriate representative of the tribe or NHO. A letter to an individual, tribe, or NHO regarding potentially affiliated human remains or cultural items does not constitute a consultation. Consultation requires interpersonal communication. Identifying the tribe or tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations to include in consultation is the first task. To do this, start by consulting with tribes and NHOs you do know and ask them about other tribes or NHOs that should be included. The National NAGPRA program website has helpful maps of tribes by Aboriginal areas and a database of NAGPRA contacts for tribes and NHOs. The Bureau of Indian Affairs also has lists of tribes that are recognized by the federal government and the Administration for Native Americans. The National Museum of the American Indian and other federal agencies may have information on affiliated tribes, intertribal coalitions, and regional organizations. State historic preservation offices may have lists of tribes and contact people for tribes and other groups having interests in their state. The timing for initiating consultation differs for inventories and summaries. For inventories, consultation starts at the beginning of the process, when a museum or federal agency begins to look at affiliating individuals or associated funerary objects in their collection. Once a museum or federal agency determines who they believe could have an interest in the individuals or associated funerary objects in their collection, they must provide the following information in writing to those lineal descendants, next of kin, tribal or NHO representatives. A list of all Indian tribes and NHOs that are or have been consulted regarding the particular human remains and associated funerary objects. A general description of the inventory that includes information such as where the individuals or objects came from, their age, how they came into their collections, etc. The projected time frame for conducting the inventory, and an indication that additional documentation used to identify cultural affiliation will be supplied upon request. This information is then used to come to a cultural affiliation decision. The consultation timing is different for summaries. With summaries, the consultation process begins after the museum or federal agency completes the summary process. Museums or federal agencies must send potentially affiliated individuals, tribes, and NHOs their summaries. It is then the individual, tribe, or NHO's decision to initiate consultation by notifying the museum or federal agency that they are interested in an item in the summary. During the consultation, museum and federal agency officials must provide copies of the summary if they have not already done so. In addition, they must provide, when requested, access to records, catalogues, relevant studies, or other pertinent data for the limited purposes of determining the geographic origin, cultural affiliation, and basic facts surrounding the summary objects. Access to this information may be requested at any time and must be provided in a reasonable manner that is agreed upon by all parties. However, the law does not require copies be made of these documents. Oftentimes, the result of a consultation on an item or items in the summary is a notice of intent to repatriate. When conducting consultations regarding inventories or summaries, museums and federal agencies may request information from the tribes as appropriate. This includes the name and address of the tribe or NHO's representative to the consultation, suggestions for ways to ensure successful consultation, including the names and appropriate methods for contacting affiliated lineal descendants and/or religious leaders who are to be consulted, and, if it is a summary consultation, the kinds of cultural items that the tribe or NHO considers to be funerary objects, sacred objects, or objects of cultural patrimony. Or, if it is an inventory consultation, the kinds of objects that the tribe or NHO reasonably believes to have been made exclusively for the funerary process or to contain human remains. Many of the same consultation principles that apply to consultations regarding collections apply to discoveries on federal or tribal land after November 16, 1990. But the process is somewhat different. Discoveries on federal or tribal land can be managed by federal agencies in one of two ways. The first way deals with intentional excavations. In this case, the federal agency consults with the tribe prior to doing any activity on the land and determines how to handle the disposition of human remains or cultural items should they be encountered during an activity. A plan is then developed. If a discovery occurs during the project, work is to stop and the plan automatically goes into place, causing a short disruption to the project. However, there are times when federal agencies do not consult with tribes prior to beginning their activities. In these cases, encounters of human remains or cultural items are called an inadvertent discovery, and the federal agency must stop all activity for 30 days, protect the areas, and immediately initiate consultation with the appropriate tribe or NHOs.
The BLM consults with tribes on new discoveries pretty much throughout the process. The initial notification of when human remains have been identified on the land, notification is the first thing that we do, which is a phone call to Indian tribes and the potentially affiliated Indian tribes. We follow up that notification with a letter basically confirming what the information that we have, that there are human remains that have been found. The next step is to determine what we're going to do, how we're going to manage this situation. And that decision process is developed in consultation with tribes. So we might have a consultation meeting on site where the remains are. It may be consultation that occurs because of distances, maybe over the phone or by letter. Basically an opportunity for the BLM to receive guidance and information from the tribes on what they would like to see happen. Once the BLM has made a decision on a course of action, we'll develop a plan of action. That plan of action is then circulated to the consulting Indian tribes. And then usually in the plan of action there's consultation kind of throughout when the remains are excavated, consultation on disposition. So consultation tends to occur throughout the process.
The regulations detail how federal agencies must initiate and conduct the consultation process. As with collections, federal agency officials must consult with the following groups: known lineal descendants, tribes, or NHOs who are currently located or once were located where the human remains or cultural items were found. Indian tribes and NHOs which have or are likely to have an interest in the human remains or cultural items, and Indian tribes and NHOs which established a cultural relationship with the human remains or cultural items in prior consultations. The tribe or NHO also may identify others for consultation, including traditional religious leaders who have consultation rights under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. The federal agency official must notify the tribal or NHO representative in writing and include the following information: a proposed time and place for consultation, the federal agency's proposed treatment of the human remains or cultural items that may be discovered, and the proposed disposition or transfer of any intentionally excavated or inadvertently discovered human remains or cultural items upon exhumation. During the consultation process, as appropriate, the federal agency official must provide the following information in writing: a list of all lineal descendants, tribes, or NHOs who are being or have been consulted regarding the disposition, and an indication that additional documentation used to identify affiliation will be supplied upon request. Likewise, federal agency officials must request, as appropriate, the following information from consulting tribes or NHOs: the name and address of the representatives in consultations, the names and appropriate methods to contact lineal descendants or next of kin who should be contacted to participate in the consultation process, recommendations on how the consultation process should be conducted, and the kinds of cultural items that the tribe or NHO considers likely to be unassociated funerary objects, sacred objects, or objects of cultural patrimony. Following consultation, the federal agency official will prepare, approve, and sign a written plan of action and share it with the lineal descendants, tribes, and NHOs involved. NAGPRA encourages federal agencies to develop comprehensive agreements with tribes or NHOs which have claimed or are likely to claim affiliated human remains or cultural items. These agreements guide how federal agencies will manage the disposition of human remains or cultural items found during land management activities covered under the agreement, thereby avoiding the need to continually consult with tribes. The correspondence related to the agreements will constitute proof of consultation under NAGPRA.
I think agencies would be well advised to begin this pre-planning process outside the context of any particular project, where you don't have those pressures involved. And the first thing that any agency should do in that circumstance, it seems to me, is try to identify the universe of tribes that have a cultural affiliation with the area where these projects may actually occur. And that ought to be done where you've got the time, the luxury of the time to do that right and to engage in that consultation with the tribes to determine whether they'll have an interest. And then I would recommend that agencies begin the process of creating a comprehensive plan which builds in a process, a predetermined process that you can rely upon if and when you encounter these materials in the context of an actual project.
Remember, this is an overview of the consultation requirements under NAGPRA. Please refer to 43 CFR 10 for complete details of NAGPRA's consultation requirements. Now that we have reviewed the legal requirements of NAGPRA, let's spend some time discussing the goals of consultation. Why did proponents of NAGPRA emphasize the need for consultation? NAGPRA was passed in 1990 because of the need to correct historical injustice regarding the treatment of Native American human remains and cultural items. Prior to the passage of NAGPRA, tribes and NHOs had little legal recourse to repatriate ancestors or cultural items. The fundamental basis of required consultation is an acknowledgement of tribal sovereignty. It is the recognition that the federal-tribal relationship is a nation-to-nation relationship, and that while landowners or repositories may have possession of human remains and cultural items, the tribes, NHOs, and descendants have a personal and communal interest that is prior and paramount and must be respected. A collaborative consultation process based on dialogue and the mutual exchange of knowledge and ideas can produce positive results for all parties that it can extend well beyond the specific circumstances that brought the parties together in the first place.
In 1999, the R.S. Peabody Museum associated with the Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, began consultation meetings with the Pueblo of Jemez. They ended up repatriating the human remains to the Pueblo of Jemez, and those human remains were reburied at Pecos National Historical Park. Also included in that group of human remains were remains from the George Peabody Museum associated with Harvard, the State of New Mexico, and the Maxwell Museum associated with the University of New Mexico. So there was approximately 2,000 individuals reburied in May of 1999 at Pecos.
The tribal leaders from the different prospective tribes got together and they sat down. They said, this is the right thing to do. The goal in the end was to bring back home the human remains and to reinter them back in the ground. You know, why all this fighting, you know? It's a time of celebration. We're getting our ancestors back home, and let's put aside our disputes and do the right thing for all the prospective tribes.
The remains were reinterred, and some of the objects, but the vast majority of the objects, I think we're probably talking close to 98% of everything Kidder excavated that was subject to the law, basically stayed exactly where they are. And the Pueblo decided to sign long-term curation agreements with the Peabody Museum in Andover and with the National Park Service so that those objects could be used for educational purposes and to celebrate how fabulous Pecos Jemez culture has been over the last 500 to 1,000 years.
Pecos National Park is an excellent example of what can result when a consultation is done well. So what do museums, tribes, and NHOs need to do to ensure a successful consultation? The most important thing to remember is that consultation is a process. It takes time, resources, preparation, and a great deal of mutual exchange and a commitment to the goals of NAGPRA. The better prepared the parties are before the first consultation meeting, the smoother and more productive the visit. Here are some insights to best practices for consultation.
I would advise any museum who is going into consultation to first do more than send a letter. NAGPRA requires that the museum send a letter and also do more than that. And a lot of times the museums fail right off the bat by just sending a letter and expecting a response.
One of the best advice I can give is to show respect. Show respect for that tribe, and I would even encourage doing a little history on the visiting tribes that's coming to your museum. Go out and find information of where they're coming from, their geographic area, their traditions, and also their historical homelands will help. Because when you come in and consult with tribes, you have to have great respect for them. And respect carries a strong bond in relations to respecting one another through tribal and government relations. It's very important. And respect's going to carry them far beyond anything written as far as protocol and how you're going to consult with that tribe.
Good preparation is a key to successful consultation. So what happens when a tribe receives a request to consult? Every tribe or NHO's NAGPRA program is structured differently, depending on a variety of factors, including size, resources, staff, and priorities. However, when a tribe or NHO receives a summary or a request to consult, it initiates a series of activities, including research, meetings with people involved with repatriation, and information gathering. Museums and federal agencies should remember to be patient, as the size and commitments of the cultural staff will determine how quickly they can respond to a request to consult.
If I'm working for a museum or federal agency and wanted to consult on these collections, which I hate using the word collections again, which, we know that story, but is to say, make an effort to build a relationship with the tribes you're working with. Maybe making contact at least once every couple of weeks, or once a week, or how long does it take to send an email, or make a phone call, leave a message, just say checking up, how's things going. Those little things like that do make a difference.
And then if you make contact with the staff, the NAGPRA staff or the preservation staff, regardless of what tribe, what agency or museums has made contact with the tribe, remember there's a tribal chair or a governor or a chief of the tribe. And out of respect for that individual, send a letter to that individual and CC their staff and ask that there be consultation with their staff, and that if there's any questions they have, feel free to contact us and provide email and address, and let them know that we're open to discuss any of these issues that we're wanting to consult with you about, so that the tribal chair will know, and that respect is built there at the top, because it is a government-to-government relationship.
Along with good preparation is regular communication. All parties should work together to determine the goals and expectations of the meeting, share concerns, and ask questions of each other. It is a good idea to develop the meeting agenda together. Museums and federal agencies should consider asking the following: who will participate in the consultation? Do they have any special needs? What would they like to do while they are at the museum? What are the tribes or NHOs' goals for the meeting? Would they like to use photography in the collections? Would they like to conduct any special ceremonies? If so, is there anything the museum should be aware of, such as the need to use fire or water or natural products? Are there any barriers to the tribe or NHO coming to the consultation, such as cost, transportation, or housing? Is there a way that the museum can help? Likewise, tribes should ask questions and inform the museum or federal agency of any special requests prior to the consultation in order to allow staff to properly prepare for the visit. This could include requests for time to view and discuss the collection, any special requirements for ceremonies, any special requirements for elders or other people traveling to the consultation, requests for additional information regarding the human remains or cultural items to be discussed in the consultation, suggestions for ensuring a successful consultation visit.
We try to bring elders in as much as we can. Now, our elders are getting so old, our main one, and he is our main consultant, and we do have consultants as part of our repatriation program, along with the specialists who are the people who do the ceremonial part at the reburials and so on.
NAGPRA places particular emphasis on the importance of consulting with traditional religious leaders and elders. For many tribes and NHOs, elders or religious leaders are the foundation of their repatriation program, providing advice, knowledge, and guidance to the repatriation specialist. Their inclusion in the consultation is critical to the process. Their comfort and needs should be discussed prior to the consultation, as the travel and meeting can be physically and emotionally taxing. Open, honest communication builds trust and lays the groundwork for a successful consultation visit. The museum or federal agency, as well as the tribe or NHO, should have a clear sense of the format and goals for the consultation meeting.
I think it's preparation to prepare the museum and the tribal representatives before they step into the room together to understand where they're coming from, what their base of knowledge is, what their expectations are, and to get everybody on the same page before they walk in the room, and to share information before they walk in the room so that there are hopefully no big surprises, and communication can start.
The day finally arrives and the consultation is about to begin. What are the elements of a good consultation? Every meeting is different depending on the size and scope of the meeting. However, a typical meeting will have the following elements: special ceremonies, introductions, food and drink, especially if elders come, explanations of the museum's protocols around the collections, explanations of the native traditional protocols around human remains and cultural items, time to view the collections, time to discuss cultural affiliation, a discussion regarding next steps.
I think, first of all, is being prepared. So we provide information to tribes about lodging and maps of downtown Denver and places to eat, as well, of course, as well as information about our collections and what we'll be looking at. Secondly, we try to get all the key players at the institution involved. We have a NAGPRA team here that consists of members representing different departments at the institution. We try to bring everyone on those consultations. We provide materials at the consultations, written materials concerning our collections for tribes to look at. We organize, one thing that we've done in the past year is that we've organized our ethnographic collections by tribe so that when tribes are actually accessing the collections, they can view all those objects together. A lot of museums will sort objects by like type, like all the baskets together or all the pottery together. And we found for consultations it really helped to keep them together, organized by tribe.
Again, consultations take time and may involve multiple meetings, phone calls, and email communications. The consultation does not end once the parties agree on the cultural affiliation of the human remains or cultural items. The museum or federal agency may conclude its inventory and publish a notice of inventory completion, or agree to repatriate a cultural item and publish a notice of intent to repatriate. There may be further consultation on the transfer of possession to complete repatriation. Keep in mind that every consultation may build on prior consultation efforts. What is important is that the consultation process produces results that all parties can agree to. In this video, we have focused on in-person consultations. However, I would encourage you to be creative as you consider how to conduct consultations. Museums have used a variety of creative methods to share information and consult, including video conferencing, phone consultations using digital images of items, or meetings with coalitions. As long as the tribes or NHOs and museum or agency agree that the goals of the consultation can be met, the method for conducting the consultation can vary. I encourage you to talk to other museums, federal agencies, and Native nations. See what methods they have used and determine what makes the best sense for your Native nation, NHO, museum, or federal agency. Now, let's take a few minutes to discuss a few specific issues related to consultations. First, what differences exist between consulting with Indian tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations? The situation for Native Hawaiian organizations differs from tribes, including Alaska Native villages and corporations, because Native Hawaiian organizations do not have reservations and do not have specific governing structure. However, NAGPRA provides a definition of a Native Hawaiian organization. NAGPRA also states that this definition includes the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and Hui Malama. In addition to these organizations, there are also island burial committees and organizations that represent families or ohanas. These are self-appointed and organized and may change over time. Those museums or agencies wishing to consult on Native Hawaiian human remains or cultural items should refer to the National NAGPRA Program, Native American Consultation Database, for published notices of NHOs from prior consultations. Contact the Department of Interior, Hawaiian Liaison for its list of NHOs. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Hawaii State Historic Preservation Office are also good sources of information.
Native Hawaiians have under NAGPRA, it's really tricky because, unlike Indian tribes and Alaska Native corporations, we don't have a recognized entity that governs us all. And as a result, like for an Indian tribe, you can only receive one claim, and that's from the tribe. Well, with Native Hawaiians, you can receive multiple claims because you have multiple organizations. And so the real challenge isn't a result of NAGPRA. It's a result of the state of affairs of Native Hawaiians.
Another special circumstance is working with non-federally recognized Indian groups. Museums can affiliate human remains and cultural items in their collection to these groups. A museum can consult with the groups either individually or as part of a coalition with other federally recognized tribes. Consultations are a pivotal element of NAGPRA. When all parties work together in the spirit of mutual cooperation and respect, it can clarify issues, build on the body of knowledge for all parties, and be the basis for long-term relationships between tribes and museums that extend well past the goals of the consultation. I hope that this video provides you with tools you need to begin your consultation. Be sure to contact the National NAGPRA program if you have any further questions or concerns regarding the consultation process. Thank you.
I guess I want to say thank you to Congress for giving us NAGPRA. And I say it I say it in a weird way because I say it laughing like that because there is criticism in Indian country of NAGPRA. But and although I will sit here and tell you about the 123,000 sets of ancestral remains that haven't come home and this work that needs to be done, I can also tell you about, the other sets of remains that have come home. And so, and setting this process into place.
I think it's humbled me a lot because I had a lot of assumptions about what I thought I knew as an archaeologist and as a scientist and as a woman. And it has humbled me. I've been privileged to take part in events that I never would have imagined taking part in. And I've built some deep, lasting friendships. And it's really helped me to gain empathy for understanding belief systems that are not my own. And that's what's really, I think, important in a struggle with this is that I've heard so many times people say, well, what's the big deal? If it were my grandmother, I wouldn't care. Well, the big deal is it's not your grandmother, it's someone else's grandmother, and they do care. And so I think building empathy and cross-cultural understanding has been pretty pivotal for me.
The last reburial I did was January. We just got the remains back. And it was from a disposition. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to have these hanging out in my office all winter, So I got my snowshoes on and threw them on my back, and I had this shovel and I was like trekking through the woods and it's like, I hope the ground's unfroze. If not, I'm gonna have to start a fire. But luckily I started digging, the ground was unfrozen. It's just like, cool, you feel really good. You're reburying and the remains were all kids, just like little itty bitty skulls and just little guys, and they're from right down where I grew up in Mackinac City, which is like 20 miles from Cross Village. So this is like real personal. And it's like felt really good, it's like I did something good today. It's just like something I can be proud of. I call my mom and she's all happy and tell other people. I was like, oh, that's a good thing.